Good morning. We are convening today's hearing. On the docket is one case, a status report, modification order for abatement, South Coast AQMD versus Los Angeles City Sanitation Bureau Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, case number 1212-40. We do have a hearing board member participating remotely. Dr. Abraham, I presume that your meeting notice was posted in time pursuant to the Brown Act, and that your location is accessible to the public.
Correct.
Is there anyone in the room with you now?
No.
Very well. All right, we have a few witnesses for which we'll administer the oath in a second. Before us, we have representing the district.
Erica Chavez.
And representing the Los Angeles Sanitation.
Virginia Choi for respondent. Sitting up in the stand for respondent.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and provide the oath if all the witnesses would stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence that you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any individuals online desirous of providing non-evidentiary public testimony and or evidentiary public comment?
Yes, I do have a hand raised online in the audience. We do have a speaker for public comment, Daniel Pankow.
Perfect. Why don't we take the individual online? 3 minutes on the clock. State your name for the record. And are you providing public comment online, or are you providing evidentiary testimony? Mr. Day, can we elevate the person with their hand raised?
I don't see her anymore.
Okay.
But now I see a Tom Ford. Oh, no, she's back now.
Okay.
Let me.
So why don't we go ahead and elevate TK, and then we'll take Ford after.
Okay, we're trying to promote. They
Okay.
have to accept it.
No problem.
Okay, there you go. Now they do.
All right, we'll take TK. Please state your name for the record, 3 minutes on the clock. Are you providing general public comment or evidentiary testimony?
Yes, I believe you folks are referring to me, Tom Ford, and this is public comment, sir.
Okay, 3 minutes on the clock. The floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you. Way of introduction, Tom Ford. I am the CEO of the Bay Foundation, director of the Santa Monica Bay National Estuary Program. I also co-direct the Coastal Research Institute here, Loyola Marymount University. My understanding that some of the proceedings today are regarding complaints about odor near the very end of October of this year, around the 28th, 29th, towards the end of the month. And I just wanted to make sure that folks were taking into consideration that the region was experiencing a pronounced harmful algal bloom or red tide event during that period of time. My family and I live up in Santa Monica, colleagues down in San Diego, and many places along that entire region here in Southern California. We're experiencing odors associated with that harmful algal bloom. For just quick orientation for folks that may not be familiar with what those are, we see a pulse of nutrients moving up into the area in the ocean where the sunlight is intense enough to stimulate photosynthesis, and this expansive biomass of plankton just takes off with essentially with that fertilizer, and they grow by the trillions, and then they start to die by the trillions, and the decay of all that matter produces a lot of odors. Hydrogen sulfide, amongst others, is a very rich organic smell, and I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that that was happening very broadly throughout Southern California at the same time that I think there were, as I understand it, complaints about perhaps odors issuing from the Hyperion sewage treatment plant. So important context to keep in consideration in your deliberations today. I appreciate the chance to speak with you. I don't need to use the rest of your time. If there's a question, I'm certainly happy to try to address it.
Thank you very kindly, Ms. Tamara Kay. Okay, welcome back. There's an individual who is in person. We'd love to have you to come over to the microphone and state your name for the record. Are you providing general public comment or evidentiary testimony?
Just general public comment.
Very well, the floor is yours. So there will not be any questions of the hearing board or either side. The floor is yours, 3 minutes on the clock.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Board Chair and members. My name is Daniel Pankow. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager with the City of El Segundo. I would like to thank the district for having this additional hearing and also for receiving our written letter that detailed our ongoing concerns with the Hyperion facility. I would like to amplify a few of the comments that were included in that letter. One being that the abatement order be extended until the facility can demonstrate environmental compliance, along with the conditions included within the original abatement order. So far this year, the district has issued at least 18 notices of violation for the facility. Secondly, the reassignment of Inspector Haynes to Hyperion. His institutional knowledge of the facility is critical for environmental compliance. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will defer numbering and naming the exhibits until perhaps a few minutes post the commencement of the hearing. Now, we have some documents from the petitioner. The statements.
I didn't present any documents.
Whether you have an exhibit.
I have Drew Boyles, the mayor of El Segundo, has his hands
Okay.
raised.
Let's elevate the mayor. We're talking about findings and decisions. So we have a document.
I didn't provide one for today. We're not seeking a modification today. So I think it's just a seal here.
So which one are we supposed to go by? The previous one,
September 5th.
September 5th? Because, okay, there are no changes from that proposed?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, 3 minutes on the clock. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you so much. This is Mayor Drew Boyles. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm on my way to Diamond Bar right now. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments that were made. Please encourage you all, implore you actually to heed the letter that we wrote to the AQMD hearing board and also take those comments of ours into consideration, please, as you deliberate. Also, I would like to reiterate what was previously said about Inspector Haynes. He has been incredibly helpful to the city of El Segundo, and I would argue for the city of LA and Hyperion as well. We'd love to have him available as a resource. And I just want to, again, thank you for all the support over the last few hearings that I've been on. You guys have been great advocates for the city of El Segundo and effectively the air quality in the region. And I appreciate your time and your stewardship on this matter. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Chavez, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. We are here for a status hearing on the public nuisance order for abatement against LA Sanitation Hyperion Treatment Plant. As you recall, we were here on September 5th, where we had a modification hearing and the board granted several updates to the OA to address some outstanding operational issues and responsiveness concerns, including updates to the complaint investigation and report, required repairs to the truck loading facility doors, transparency of ongoing projects, continued OA training, and notifications for certain equipment breakdowns. The district continues to oversee Hyperion's operations and compliance with these OA conditions. Today, the district is not seeking changes to the abatement order, and the district will have inspector for vendor for lay to provide updates on odor complaints, notices of violation, and compliance with the OA conditions. Yeah.
Ms. Hoppenstein?
Good morning, Virginia Choi for respondent. Respondent City of Los Angeles, including its Hyperion facility, has been working cooperatively and diligently with this board, staff at AQMD, the El Segundo officials, and community in order to address the concerns that have been issued many times before in this forum. That has included implementing and seeing through vast investments, odor mitigation projects that have both been under this abatement order as well as done voluntarily and predated this abatement order. And in that spirit, the respondent joins the district's support for the continuation of the existing abatement order. Thank you.
Okay, let us take, Mr. Day, let us remove speakers who previously provided comments under testimony. And then we're going to take Tamara Kay. And then we'll take and then we'll come back and take your witnesses, Ms. Chavez. Tamara Kay, you've been elevated. Can you speak? We can't hear you. Yes. Tamara Chowski, can you test your mic? Okay, Mr. Day, let us remove Mr. Ford and Mayor Boyles. Ms. Gachowski, can you speak? Okay, are there any individuals who raise their hands? Okay, so we're going to take Stephanie Wong, and we're going to take all other speakers at the end of the hearing. Ms. Wong, state your name for the record, 3 minutes on the clock. And then once she concludes speaking, Mr. Day.
Okay, this is Stephanie Wong. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a resident of El Segundo, and I have a couple of requests. It's that the AQMD be able to review odorless chemicals, because right now it only reviews odors, but there's a lot of chemicals that come onto the Hyperion site, which I would like the AQMD, which I would like us to be able to report to the AQMD. I would also like to request that residents be given access to be able to review the Hyperion plant, as some people who are chemically sensitive are able to sense chemical leaks at the plant without monitoring equipment. And I think that would be really helpful to point out areas that might need better containment. I know that they have some containment going over there, but I think it needs to be improved. Secondly, thirdly, I'd like us to be able to shift the focus from monitoring just a few air chemicals that come out of that place to containing and capturing all chemicals and odors that emanate from that facility. They have truckloads of chemicals coming in 24/7, and I think it would be helpful for the cleaning up of our air quality in El Segundo for us to focus on basically containing that so that it stays at their location. I know it's possible. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Wong, you're just providing general public comment, correct?
General comment, yes, thank you.
Very kindly. All right, Ms. Chavez, you call your first witness.
Oh, sure. Did you want to do the, did you have exhibits?
We're going to number all the exhibits subsequently.
Oh, yes, I'll call Inspector Vander for like. Good morning. Can you spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Vander, Vander, first name. Last name is Ferrer-Ley, Ferrerle.
And did you take the oath this morning?
Yes,
Okay, and what is your title with the district?
air quality in two.
And can you remind us about your familiarity and role with Hyperion?
I'm currently the lead inspector for Hyperion.
Lead inspector, okay. And how, well, has your role changed in the last, or since the last date of hearing at all?
Yes, I'm visiting the facility weekly and conducting weekend inspections regularly.
Okay. And so you're visiting weekly for what?
Mostly to comply with the OA conditions as well as any sort of complaints.
Grievance compliance with the OA conditions.
Correct.
Okay. And daily, sometimes to respond to complaints.
Correct.
Okay. And did you review anything to prepare for your testimony today?
Yes, the OA and the NOVs.
Okay. And okay, so let's talk about odor complaints. Does the district continue to receive odor complaints about Hyperion?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell us the counts since the last hearing, September 5th?
Yes, so in September, we received 150 complaints. In October, we received 189 complaints. And in November through November 18th, we've received 69.
Okay, and so how about over this past weekend? Can you tell us what we saw on Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
We received 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and 2 on Monday.
Okay, and when you go out to respond to these complaints, have you done an investigation into the cause of the complaint or the cause of odors?
Yes. Right now, it appears that the mix of odors comes from the primary tanks, clarifiers, and the headworks building.
Okay. And has the complaints generally remained consistent?
Yes.
And are we seeing odors as being a result of any equipment failures or breakdowns at the facility?
No.
And we had one speaker talk about red algae. When was that? Do you recall?
October.
October, and we'll talk about NOVs in a second. But did we see an increase in complaints during that time?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did that episode last?
I'd say 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Okay, and so moving on to like notices of violations, were you able to review any NOVs that were issued since the last date of hearing?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell us about those?
There were 5 NOVs issued since the last hearing on September 5th by several different inspectors, one of them including myself.
Okay, and how many in September?
In September, they received 3 NOVs.
3 NOVs. Okay, and then we had how many in October?
1.
Okay, and was that during the time of that red algae?
Correct.
Okay. But an inspector would have still gone out to confirm the odors themselves, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then the last NOV was issued by you And when was that?
This past Friday,
Okay.
the 15th of November.
Okay. And did you review all the NOV reports, even though you weren't necessarily the one who issued them?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us generally what we're seeing as maybe the causes, or were any causes found?
No direct causes, in just general odors confirmed on the plant.
Okay. Did we see any breakdown of equipment or equipment failures that might have caused the odors?
No,
Okay. Where were the odors traced back to?
the headworks and the primaries.
Okay. And can you tell us more about the NOV that you issued yourself in your investigation last week?
Yes, so on Friday, I did receive a number of complaints of odors from the El Segundo area. The wind was pretty high, around the 20-mile-per-hour mark. That's what I mostly attributed the odors causing to go into the neighborhood. I traced the odors to be sourced from the primaries on the facility, consistent with the odors that I detected in the neighborhood.
Okay. And when you say the primaries, can you describe what you're referring to again?
The primary tanks that hold sewage.
Okay. You mentioned the wind. Can you talk about the wind and its effect on the odors, or what you've experienced when you've done your investigation?
Yeah, so what I've experienced is I've conducted an upwind and a downwind of the facility, detected no odors upwind along the beachfront area. Winds it's easier to detect those odors in the neighborhood. And so on that day when there were a high case of strong winds, then it was prevalent, very prevalent in the neighborhood.
And aside from just that day, in general, do the winds have an effect, or when you do your investigations, do you notice that when you're out in the community, or?
I do always conduct an upwind and downwind surveillance. However, it was more prevalent the stronger that the winds are.
Okay. And that was on Friday, you said?
Correct.
All right. You also said that you are you visit the site weekly to ensure compliance with the OA conditions and review Hyperion, work on that. Has any NOVs been issued for lack of compliance with OA conditions?
No.
Okay, since the last date of hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you reviewed the most recent OA order?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall the changes that the modification made at the last hearing?
Yes. In regards to complaint vision and response, requiring the verification of odors and callbacks.
Okay. So in regard to complaint, does it appear that the Hyperion operators are complying with this condition, verifying odors at the location and completing callbacks and report back to the complainant?
In my observation, yes, I've observed them conducting their investigations.
Okay, and do we still have complaints about that from the community members?
They are receiving the reports and they are observing them. However, I think they are still concerned about the timeliness of receiving those reports.
Okay. Receiving the investigation report after the fact.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, any other concerns about Hyperion's complaint investigations?
No.
Okay. And another one was transparency of ongoing projects. The facility was required to post their ongoing projects. Do you know if they're complying with that condition?
An observation, yes.
And have you talked to the community members, and are they receiving notice of projects ongoing at the facility?
Yes, they have informed me they are.
Okay, and how much notice, if they told you how much notice that they are receiving?
Roughly 4 to 5 days ahead of the project.
Okay, and any complaints that we have received from the community members on that issue?
None in my observation.
Okay. Another condition was the truck loading facilities. Require to fix the doors and maintain them closed. Can you talk about what you have seen at the facility, if this has been completed?
Yes, so I haven't run into any issues with the doors being open or broken. They have been closed in all the times that I've conducted surveillance.
And they have been fixed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and do you know when that was?
I
Approximately?
believe early October.
Okay. Okay. And you have not seen them open when they shouldn't be, is that correct?
No, I've not seen them open.
Okay. Let's see. Another condition was training on the OA and continual training. At the last hearing, I believe we heard testimony that some of the operators still were not knowledgeable about some of the conditions. Have you encountered that when you've been on site, or what have you seen?
I haven't experienced any, in my experience, I haven't observed any operators unaware of any OA conditions.
Okay, so the operators have been responsive, at least when you've been on site.
Correct.
Okay. And let's see, and there was another condition out requiring breakdown notification for any order of abatement equipment, like the fence line monitors and actor logs. Have there been any problems with this condition, or have we received any breakdowns?
I have not received any breakdowns.
Have there been any violations of the conditions that you're aware of?
No.
Okay. So I want to just get a general overview of the plant and the community. And you stated that you're on the site at least weekly, or at least once a week to visit, but generally, are you there almost daily?
Yes.
And when you're there daily, how long do you spend at the facility?
Typically an hour to 2 hours.
Every day?
Correct.
Okay.
In response to complaints, mostly.
Okay, and when you're there conducting your weekly investigations, how long are those different? Or do you
Yes.
spend longer amounts of time at the site?
It depends on the number of complaints that we receive. Sometimes it can vary. If we receive a large number of complaints, then we'll have to conduct and confirm with me. But if there aren't usually complaints on the weekend, then the investigation can go quicker.
Okay, and so I see. So how long does your investigation into compliance with the OA conditions generally take? Okay. So you're on site 2 to 3 hours almost every day.
Correct.
Okay. And so what have you, general, can you tell us what have you observed? Any others when you've been on site?
No equipment failures. What I've been observing since the last hearing has just been a number of scheduled maintenances and cleanings in preparation for their wet weather season.
Okay. And these cleanings are, as far as you know, they're routine?
Correct.
Okay. And do you know what is involved in the wet weather season?
What I've been informed is that they're preparing the tanks in regards to being able to take a higher influx, and as well as upgrading their electrical infrastructure.
Okay. And do you know more about the electrical infrastructure?
Nothing in specific.
Okay. All right. And aside from the cleanings, other normal maintenance you've observed?
No other maintenance
Okay.
in my observations.
Okay. And where do you where do you detect odors when you're on site?
Primarily the primary tanks, as well as around the truck loading facilities.
Okay, and you said the primary tanks is where they hold sewage and the truck loading facilities. Can you describe those again?
Yes, so the loading barn as well as the truck loading facilities for the material to be taken off from the plant in their process, the solid material.
Okay, what type of, tell us, if you know, like the process of the truck loading facilities, are they receiving the trucks with the material?
No, so the facility in its process of processing the sewage and wastewater, the byproducts is taken to landfills and that's loaded in the truck loading facilities.
Okay, great. And so far, when you've been on site, you said that you have observed the doors being closed to that.
Yes, the doors have been closed.
Okay. All right, we talked about the wind effect when you've been out in the community. Let's see. A little bit more about the wind. How have you noticed, like, does it carry it far into the community? Are you seeing odors on the fence line or where?
I think both. Like I said earlier, it depends on the strength of the wind. It can carry it further into the community, as far as Main Street in El Segundo. However, there are some pockets that I can consistently detect odors in community.
And generally, what are you gathering from the community residents? Do they have specific complaints when they're interacting with Hyperion or anything?
Mostly that they are just frustrated. They were frustrated with the situation. They are concerned about the notice for the projects. They would like a more advanced notice, but just in general, frustration.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Halpus and Ms. Choi on cross.
Yes, please. Mr. Verle, as lead inspector, do you have familiarity generally with how the odor inspections take place when verifying odors or inspectors are verifying odors?
The Hyperion
Correct.
odor investigation,
Correct.
generally, yes.
When I say Hyperion odor investigation, I mean an odor investigation performed by the district in response to complaints prior to issuance of an NOV. Are you familiar with that? And why are you familiar with that practice?
That's what we conduct in order to issue the 402 nuisance violations.
And as a lead inspector, would you say that your familiarity with just the general practice of how to conduct the inspections in order to then potentially issue the NOV, I think you called it 402 inspections, is that the general practice of other inspectors, not just the lead inspector?
Correct.
And when issuing NOVs, like those that are at issue for Hyperion from September and through November, do you consider the facilities monitoring reporting as HUS is recorded at the fence line?
Do we take that into consideration for the violation?
Correct.
No, we mostly just verify those odors with the complaints.
So if there is a possibility that there will be no odors or limited odors recorded at the fence line, and yet an NOV might still issue based on your odor complaint at the location?
Correct.
An investigation of the location. Do you consider the AQMD data that Hyperion takes in and around the facility when issuing the 402 NOVs?
We do take a observational look at the data, but it's not part of the consideration to issue the violation.
Is that because whether or not there's an operational explanation for the NOV and NOV might still be issued?
Correct.
And do you review any neighboring facilities fence line monitoring as part of that NOV investigation, the 402?
It's a part of the upwind and downwind surveillance. If we're detecting those odors consistent with the ones in the neighborhood, then we wouldn't necessarily need to investigate, but we can if necessary.
With respect to the two, and there were NOVs issued on September 6th and September 7th, is that correct?
Correct.
And with respect to those two NOVs, was there any investigation as to other facilities potentially being the cause of the complaint of odors?
Not that I've observed in the report.
Were you informed by the investigator who issued those NOVs? I believe it's Inspector Solomon, is that right?
Correct. I have not spoken to them in regards to those violations.
Were you informed, even if you didn't speak to, but through other communications, that the facility provided information to the inspector that there were actual exceedances at a neighboring facility, at the Chevron facility, that was recorded on their fence line readings?
I don't believe I was provided that information.
So you were not provided readings of exceedances at a different facility that could have explained the errors complained of that were attributed in that day?
No, not for that investigation.
And as a general matter, when there is information that might be provided by one facility that's being investigated for a 402 order complaint, is there where there's information presented to suggest maybe another cause, another source, what is the procedure that the inspector goes through to potentially investigate an additional source? Do you know?
Well, the investigation is usually conducted on the day that the violation is verified. If there is information provided after the investigation has been concluded by the inspector, typically that's dealt with by the legal counsel.
And as far as you know, in those two September NOVs, there was no additional investigation, for example, of Chevron on that date?
Not that I'm aware of.
Would you be aware of it? Would you be informed?
If there were any sort of changes or resolution, I possibly could be made aware of that, but it's usually relegated to the inspector who issued that violation, as well as with the legal counsel.
Are the inspectors who are, such as yourself or Inspector Solomon is one example, who are investigating 402 complaints that are being attributed perhaps by the caller to Hyperion, do you also go to other facilities to investigate, let's say Chevron, for example?
It depends on the investigation, on the status of our investigation. If detecting those odors consistent with another facility, then we can absolutely investigate.
And what sort of documentation do you prepare, just in general, with respect to these 402 investigations?
Generally, when it comes to a 402 investigation, it's our upland, downland surveillance, and any sort of background information on the facility if it's one that has had consistent 402 violations.
Do you take inspection notes? Is there a log? What's the document to be?
We do take inspection notes, but most of the time it's entered into our online system. And so that is logged with the violation and provided as a packet to legal. We usually also ask for the facility's shift supervisor logs just to see if we can determine any sort of cause for the odors. However, it's not always provided in the investigation or the violation report.
Are you familiar generally with the NOV or 402 violation issued on October 20 to the facility?
Yes.
And at the time, there has been public testimony today by Mr. Ford. There's also a public comment that was submitted, I believe, this morning by Meredith McCarthy of Heal the Bay. Have you heard or had an opportunity to review those comments?
Yes.
And at the time that the October 28 NOV was issued, did the inspector who was conducting that investigation take into account the harmful algal bloom die-off that was taking place around that time?
Yes, I have spoken to the inspector, and they provided me the testimony that they did detect the rotting odors. However, they also did detect fecal and sewage.
Do you know whether or not the harmful algal bloom decay that has been described in the public comments, whether that has the odor of sewage as well?
I believe the inspector described the odor of the algae as rotting organic material.
And is there documentation relating to that inspector's consideration of the harmful algal bloom explanation?
In their violation report.
And when the NOV was issued, was there any analysis done as to the fence line readings that suggest an offshore source, or pardon me, off facility source for odors complained of that day?
I wasn't made aware of that information, investigation.
More questions. You mentioned the primary tanks at Hyperion, and that sometimes there's an odor that you detect around the primary tanks. Were there new tank covers that were installed on all of the primary tanks as a result of this abatement process?
Yes,
And that was done by the facility. So these are new tank covers.
yes, correct.
And with respect to the timing of responses to stakeholders or complainants who call into the facility with odor complaints, do you receive weekly emails from Hyperion with explanation and kind of a spreadsheet of when stakeholders complain and when responses are given?
Yes,
And that's a document referred to as El Segundo stakeholder reporting?
yes,
And you received one as recently as the 12th of November?
I believe so.
So you have access to the records of response times and when complaints come in, is that right?
Correct,
And from your review, the facility compliance, correct?
correct.
No more questions.
Thank you, members of the hearing board. Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I'm sure I'm gonna mispronounce your name. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Is it Farrell Lee?
Ferrer-Lay.
Farrell Lee, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and Vander, first name, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate all of the work that you've been doing and going out there so diligently and getting the information that we need to be able to get a good snapshot of what's going on out there. There was mention of the fact that it's a possibility that some of the odors are also coming from Chevron. Has there been any documentation from any of the inspectors to that effect?
Provided by other inspectors to me.
In general, do you know of any?
I haven't been provided
Okay.
any sort of that documentation.
And also, wouldn't the odors that come from Chevron be much more on a chemical versus an organic that comes from Hyperion? Wouldn't that be a huge difference?
I haven't personally experienced any of the odors coming from Chevron, so I'm not too sure how to describe them.
All right, and you had mentioned Headworks. Can you explain exactly what that is?
Yes, so the Headworks is the main building where the sewage is initially intaked into the facility from the public sewer system.
Okay. And in your inspections and in discussions with some of the residents, which you have there been any complaints in regards to their health, how it's affecting their health?
Yes, I have.
And they are such as?
They've been concerned they've voiced their concern about concerns for their health in regards to H2S or the chemicals. That's what they've informed me.
And what kind of health effects?
From my experience, I've heard vomiting, I've heard headaches, I've heard dizziness, nausea, just overall an unwell feeling.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Mr. Pearman.
Yes. So the prior order had a retention of jurisdiction, if you would, by our board for final compliance on January 3rd, 2025. Do you think that date is still appropriate or should be extended?
Well, I think it's a more of a management decision, and Inspector Farley is here to talk at the site this time.
So are you going to call a management witness? We have to have an answer to that question, else we have to make our own determination without input from the district, which I would think you would want.
Well, I will provide an argument to the hearing board at the appropriate time.
Okay. I think condition 46 talked about what might happen if there were new odor chemicals employed after September 5th. You know if they actually did that, and did they give you any reports about that?
I haven't been made aware of any new chemicals at this time.
I think in discuss the complaint handling, you said that they are concerned regarding the response time. Is that what you said? When you said they, who is they?
The complainants.
Well, what is your view of it? That's a condition that they have to comply with to timely give callbacks and reports. So have they satisfied the order in that regard or not?
In my observation, they have.
Did you receive and review the emergency response plan submitted?
Yes.
Did the district provide any comments to Hyperion about that?
I believe no.
You personally did not?
No, personally correct.
One of the letters from Miss Tamara Kowski, it's unidentified, numbered yet, but it says that they talked about the public meetings, and this was a email to Michael Haynes of November 19th, and it commented upon Hyperion's outreach had said they quarterly have meetings and would soon be introduced in the monthly meeting. The witness says that in fact, they haven't had any virtual in-person town hall meetings since December 2023, kind of belying the testimony of the Hyperion witness. Do you have any comments about that?
I haven't made any observations in that regard.
So quarterly meetings aren't a requirement of the order as far as you understand.
I don't believe so.
Do you know if you or anyone from AQMD has attended a public meeting put forth by Hyperion in the last year?
I personally have not.
And what about knowing if someone else from AQMD has done so?
No, I'm unaware.
So it seems from your testimony that when the winds are at a certain level, that characterizes perhaps a further spread and intensity of the odors. Is that correct?
Correct.
So has the district looked into whether on such days where that wind condition might be predicted, to having the operations by Hyperion adjusted to reflect that might be a high wind condition, therefore they should take steps to make sure the operations are the type that would lessen the presence of odors?
Not that I've been informed about.
So as an inspector, you can suggest changes that would better improve the conditions to the community as you observe them?
I can make those suggestions to management. However, it's up to management to make the decision.
Well, are you aware of situations where the district has reached agreement with a offender, so to speak, in conditions of high winds to reduce their operations in some capacity, like landfills, et cetera?
Me personally, I'm unaware.
Mr. Barker, Palmer.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ferrarelli. You mentioned that there were approximately 408, I calculated, nuisance complaints since the September hearing, and attributed it mostly to the headworks and the truck loading station and the primary.
Yes.
Primary. So what exactly is going on there that is leading? Because we heard testimony and the report that Hyperion sends out.
Yes, I do.
And you review them.
Yes.
So they've indicated that finally the primary D has been repaired and enclosed, right? So all the primaries have been repaired and got new roofs, so to speak.
Correct.
So what is coming then from the primaries? That is, you said the orders are coming from the primary. What is the source from the primary then?
I'm just detecting it on the side of those covers. As far as I know, there isn't any operations outside of normal parameters.
When you're saying you're detecting outside, so is it leaking from the inside for you to detect it outside?
Possibly.
You have identified any areas where there's leaks or holes or something where it could be leaking outside?
I haven't specifically identified a leak, but that's where I'm detecting the area of those odors.
Around the primaries?
Correct.
Specifically, which one, A, B, C, D, or all of them, or?
Just all of the primaries in around that area.
So the repairs they've did is not it's not working properly? Is that what, is that a conclusion we should draw? Or?
I'm not too sure in that regard if they are working as designed.
Okay. Yeah, I think I asked this the last time. Do you take a Draeger? I'm not a Draeger, I'm sorry. To measure H2S?
No, inspectors do not carry Jerome monitors outside of the Title V inspection.
Okay. And you don't conduct Title V inspection?
I do conduct the Title V inspection.
When you do conduct, you take it?
Correct. We have another inspector who comes along to measure H2S around the facility on different equipment.
Do you know why it's limited to Title V inspections only?
I'm not too sure. I believe it just depends on the availability of the equipment. Our standard operations isn't to carry a Jerome meter or take H2S measurements during regular odor investigations.
Okay. Now you also mentioned the headworks.
Correct.
What's going on there at the headworks is causing the potential odor of a source to cause it to be a source?
Well, I believe that's the initial area that the sewage is received into the plant. And so that's the rawest form of its sewage.
And isn't the headworks ventilated going to a control system?
Yes.
So for that to be ordered, I mean, either when the control system is not working well to pull the air from the headworks area, or what is causing the odors at the odor at the headworks?
I'm unsure outside of normal operations.
Okay. Truck loading then. You also mentioned truck loading facilities are causing. So let's break it out. There's several truck loading operations, right?
Correct.
So is it from the grid or is it from the treated sludge? Where specifically are you observing odors?
I am detecting area in the area of the actual truck loading facility itself. That's in regards to more of a sewagey odor. The grit loading is more of a fish-like odor.
But you're detecting at both the grit loading and also at the sewage sludge loading?
Yes.
But both of them, as you indicated, they're closed, right? The doors were, and they're going to a scrubber.
Correct.
And the doors are closed and they're vented to a control system. Where's the escape? It's essentially from the building that you're smelling.
I'm not too sure exactly where the escape is coming from. However, I am still detecting areas.
So potentially they have fugitive emissions from all these places that you mentioned, the headworks, the primaries, and the truck loading areas.
Potentially, correct.
Okay. But you don't know specifically.
Correct.
General.
In general, correct.
And there was enough for you to issue notice of violation. The violation you issued on the November, was it specifically for, or which area did you?
In that investigation, I traced the odors back to the primary tanks.
Primary tanks?
Yes.
So you went to the primary tanks?
Yes.
A, B, C, D, which one?
All tanks.
And you could smell very strongly then?
Correct.
From the primary tank. So there's fugitives coming from the now repaired primary tanks?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't know what's causing it?
No, there's no reported breakdowns of any equipment.
Okay. Have you been out there when the algae boom is occurring?
Yes.
And that's your upwind measurements, basically, or your reading?
Yes, I was able to detect the odors of the algae bloom. However, it was distinct from the sewage and fecal matter of the plant.
Does it have a H2S type odor?
To me, it was more of rotting organic material, potentially a little bit of H2S in there, but mostly rotting.
And have you observed any high readings at those H2S sites when the algae bloom is occurring?
Along the fence line?
Yeah.
Not that I've observed directly.
So do you think that's a contributing source to the odors that the residents are experiencing during these algae blooms?
The algae bloom?
Yeah.
I believe so.
But you can easily differentiate, as you could.
Correct.
From the versus the sewage versus the different types of odors from the city.
Yes, I was able to make that distinction. I didn't receive enough complaints, or I wasn't able to verify enough complaints to issue a violation. However, I was able to make the distinction between the algae bloom and the sewage-like odors, plus the issue violation in late October.
Late October. So I'm looking at the October report. Do you have that?
The October monthly report?
Yeah, monthly report.
I do not have that in front of me.
Okay, that's all right. September said 47 odor complaints, 14 were due to red algae bloom. The remaining 33 came from 6 different residences. So there's odor from red algae bloom in Santa Monica Bay. So that's in October. Do you know if that's still ongoing, the red algae bloom?
I believe it is not.
Okay, so that was October. I can remember reading that in the September report, but maybe I missed it. Then the other, one of the other requirement was that they relocate that acrolog, and they're waiting for the district to approve the relocation.
I haven't heard in that regard.
Have you checked with them to see what the status is of the relocation?
Relocation of the fence line?
Yeah.
I believe I haven't heard any changes of any
Because
relocation.
it says it's pending AQMD approval. Do you know?
I don't believe there's anything outstanding. Oh, okay. Then I'll have to check on at break.
Okay. Let's see what else is in this report. Oh yeah, then they do call in during what do you call high readings of H2S. They do call what do you call that? The what that they do when this H2S reading is high.
Correct.
And you review them.
Correct.
And you're satisfied with what they indicated as for the cause for the high H2S reading?
On a specific day?
Yeah.
Which day?
Let's take the one that they called in. I just saw it. Hang on, let me look for that. What do you call that report when they submit? Not the breakdown. It's the
Are you referring to the root cause analysis?
root cause analysis. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, do you review the root cause analysis?
Yes.
Okay. And so the one that was in, let me check that. Let me get that if I can find it. October 2024, or 10/30, I mean, sometime in October, we submitted the report on the 30th of October. The peak was 0.02 or 3 ppm. Did you review that report at the end of October?
I believe so.
And what was the reason they cited for the high readings?
They reported that there was a expungement from secondaries of H2S due to high LEL.
Oh.
However, it's still being investigated by management in regards to enforcement action.
Okay. High, what do you say, expunge?
Sorry, the explosive limit, the lower explosive limit, yes.
So they opened it to release it because of the high, it reached
there is a monitor within the tank to determine if it's reaching a higher lower explosive limit. It intakes oxygen to expel the
concentration.
Correct.
So then you get the high reading.
Correct. That's what the root cause analysis reported.
So you do review all the root cause. Are you the primary who reviews the root cause analysis?
I am one of the people who review.
Now,
the
are you
request.
the new mindset for the facility?
I believe so, correct. I am the lead inspector.
Is the lead, and Michael Haynes is assigned elsewhere,
As far as I know, I haven't been made aware of where Michael Haynes has been assigned to.
but you're the lead right now.
Correct.
And how many, are you a supervisor or,
Just
what's
a
your
regular
title?
air quality inspector.
So the other inspectors don't report to you. They're also part of the rotation that goes to the facility.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, okay. I've got no further question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If we could have Ms. Hoppin stand, your witness.
Yes, respondent would like to call Ms. Nicole McIntosh.
While she's coming, Ms. Kowalski, can you hear us? Tamara Kowalski. Ms. Kowalski, can you hear us? Because we can't hear you. All right, Ms. Chow, the floor is yours.
All right, Ms. McIntosh, could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Nicole McIntosh, NicoleMcIntosh.
Thank you. Could you briefly describe your position with the city and your job duties?
I am the acting process engineer overseeing the air pollution control facility or facilities at Hyperion, and I am one of the people implementing the order of abatement.
Thank you. So there has been a question from Board Member Perriman regarding the condition 46 regarding the odor neutralizing chemicals requirement. I don't know if you're familiar, but here's a copy if you need it. Has it been a requirement under that condition 46 to deploy odor neutralizing chemicals if there is a PPB of a certain level reached at Hyperion?
Yes.
And that has been a requirement since January or February of 2023, since that condition went into effect. Is that right?
Yes.
And so the modification made at the last hearing to that condition was simply that if new chemicals were added, then Hyperion was to submit the safety data sheets to AQMD, correct?
That is correct.
And have any new chemicals been deployed that were different from the ones previously used?
No, all chemicals that we are using, the MSDSs have been submitted to AQMD.
Thank you. And there was some suggestion earlier that during perhaps high wind days, operations could be reduced to a different level. Is Hyperion operations a 24/7 facility?
Yes, it is.
And that is because as long as people are flushing toilets, sewage is flowing and sewer is reaching Hyperion. Is that right?
We get an average of 200 million gallons of sewage a day in dry weather conditions. We don't have the ability to stop the flow in. If we were able to do that, then we would be in flood conditions.
So sewage cannot be stopped?
No.
Diverted?
No.
Suspended somewhere?
If it was, it would create more odor than you would be to prevent.
So is there any way that Hyperion could reduce operations irrespective of the weather?
The only things that could be done is that we could suspend some of the construction activities, which is usually done because we can't operate heavy equipment in high winds regardless. But for the standard process, we would not be able to stop.
Any operations to treat the sewage that flows in, could that be reduced, stopped?
It would create more problems if we were to do that.
Thank you. So there was some testimony earlier regarding potential fugitive emissions at Headworks. Are there odor control measures around a Headworks facility?
Yes, there are.
Can you describe briefly what those are?
Within the Headworks facility, we do have an odor control facility. We have a biotrickling filter that's set up that pulls foul air from the influent sewers and the bar screen areas, as well as the truck loading bays. That is under the Title V permit and is checked on daily. In addition to that, we also have for part of the plant-wide monitoring system, we have a H2S monitor that is outside of the Headworks facility. And we've actually recently voluntarily just deployed a couple of extra ones, considering some of the complaints that have come up. And so that's monitored regularly. So those are the AQMD monitors, and those take a reading every 15 minutes.
And Ms. McIntosh, if the fence line readings do not show an elevated level of H2S, then does that suggest that any H2S from the Headworks facility is limited to the local vicinity of the Headworks and does not reach the end?
Correct. And if I may say, one of the fence line monitors is in a direct line from the Headworks facility. So
I do want to talk about some of the NOVs that were discussed by Inspector Federley. So an NOV was issued on September 6, 2024. Are you familiar with that NOV?
yes, I am.
And did AQMD provide any information regarding location, time, and odor description of the complaints that form the basis, the verified complaints that form the basis of that NOV?
No.
So do they usually provide that information?
Very rarely. I will not say that it never happens, but we regularly do put requests for information because they have a 24-hour period in order to issue the NOV for the 6 calls, but it becomes very problematic for us to do an investigation when we are looking at a half a mile border over a 24-hour period. So we do an investigation for all of that time period in all of the areas, but
So assuming that information is not provided by the AQMD inspector, then any investigation occurs after the fact, after
yes,
the NOV is issued.
yeah, and we will often get it after the fact. It's actually common to get them days or weeks after the incident. So it is nearly impossible for us to do anything about it at that point.
So for the September 6th NOV, did you or anyone at Hyperion have the chance to look back at the available data for that date, including the Hyperion fence line readings?
Yes.
Okay. Did it show any notable elevated levels of H2S? What did you see?
So on that particular day, there were some elevated readings, but they were not out of violation. As you would look at the readings for that evening, you would see there were about every 5 minutes, you would see a spike running from the south monitor to the central monitor to the north monitor in a very specific line. Chevron is due to the south of us. The prevailing winds were going in that direction, and about 5 or 10 minutes prior to the elevated readings that we were discovering, there was a recorded, I'm assuming in an exceedance that Chevron would have the same requirements that we would have. Their fence line monitors that were in the area they were over 30 parts per billion, which is our requirement. So it had dissipated by the time it had come up, but there was a very definitive plume running through the plant.
When you say the 30 ppb readings that were detected, are you referring to the monitoring station at St. Anthony's Church that relates to the Chevron refinery?
No, these are the ones that are at the Chevron refinery websites. So it's for the Chevron facility.
So the Chevron readings,
Correct.
not the Hyperion readings. And there was some suggestion here that there may be a difference between the H2S smells that originate from Hyperion versus the H2S smells that originate from Chevron. Do you know if there would be a difference between the two H2S smells depending on the source?
No, hydrogen sulfide is an inorganic chemical. It smells the same regardless of where it originates.
And hydrogen sulfide, or H2S, is the compound that the district has previously also said is related to smells from wastewater activities, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Was there anything, you earlier mentioned a plume. Can you sort of explain what that means for people who are not familiar with that terminology, what that and the significance of why you mentioned a plume?
Well, I can't specifically say what happened at Chevron, but I do know that so anytime you would have any kind of a gaseous emission, that it would, the source would be more concentrated. And then as it disperses into the air and you have wind currents carrying it, it would start to fan out and spread out. Just like if you put a drop of a colored liquid in water, it will start to dissipate as it moves away.
And were any odor complaints made to Hyperion that day?
I believe we had one.
And moving on to looks like it's the following date, on September 7th, there was also an NOV. Are you also familiar with this NOV?
Yes.
And were you similarly able to look back at the data that was associated with that day?
Yes.
And was there anything noteworthy you found with Hyperion's H2S readings?
There were very low readings at Hyperion, but we did notice some VOC spikes at Chevron. And VOCs are one of the major producers of VOCs is oil refineries. That's what, oil is produced from, is organic chemicals.
And VOCs what are they and how do they relate to odors?
Volatile organic compounds, there's a variety of different ones. And some of them have they'll have different odors associated with them. Sometimes they'll have a burning smell, or they'll have an earthy smell, or sometimes a chemical-y smell. But we are not a major producer of VOCs at Hyperion.
Thank you. I want to talk about this October 28th, 2024 NOV. Are you also familiar with this NOV?
Yes.
And you've reviewed the underlying data after the fact to look at if anything was going on that day?
Correct.
And was there anything notable at Hyperion's fence line?
There were very low readings at the fence line. There was no outstanding activities going on at the plant at the time.
Were there any odor complaints made to Hyperion that day?
I believe there were at most 2.
Was there anything different about the odor complaints that day versus the usual odor complaints?
We did receive a large number of complaints that were coming in from outside of our area. They were coming in from as far away as 8.5 to 9 miles away. Just as a comparison, that would be from where we are sitting now, that would be about as far as Cal State Fullerton or to the 210 freeway. So it is really unlikely that we would have had, we would be the source of an odor from that far away when we were not able to detect any outstanding odors at our facility at the time.
Thank you. No more questions.
Ms. Chavez, on cross.
Thank you. Okay, there was some testimony about projects at Hyperion and maintenance for the wet season. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The amount of flow that we get into the plant can double or more depending on the season. So we want to make sure that we are able to handle the additional capacity of flow that comes through the plant. So we are currently in the process of trying to make sure that we have additional primary sedimentation tanks available, as well as pumps to transfer things through the plant. And make sure that our secondary system would be able to handle the additional flow. We are also making sure that the bar screens are in good maintenance so that they would be able to handle the additional solid materials that would be coming into the plant.
And you submitted a list of scheduled projects at Hyperion. Are those capital projects or are those regular maintenance that goes on at Hyperion?
Was this for condition 27?
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
That is both, because the requirement did state that it needed to be all ongoing construction as well as maintenance. So it reflects both.
Okay, and could you tell us about the capital projects that may be going on at Hyperion?
The ones that are currently going on?
Yes.
We have the ongoing improvements that are going on in our primary tanks. We also have some work that's going on our digesters. We are doing some improvements on our reactors. I would have to look through the entire report. I collect the data from all of the engineering and maintenance staff throughout the plant, so I am not 100% familiar with all of the different activities that are going on.
Do you know more about the work on the primary tanks?
I do know about the primary tanks.
And what does that entail?
This is just the ongoing work that's been going on. They're doing improvements within the tanks themselves. They are removing or repairing and replacing the internal operations for the skimmers, the motors, and this has been the ongoing project for all of the primary tanks that's been going on for a few years now.
And is this a continuous maintenance, or is it something that will have an end date once it's completed?
Well, there's both. There's both aspects that go with it. The repair work will have an end date to it, but maintenance would have to be going on continuously. If we did not maintain the equipment, then it would not be able to function. So we have a standard protocol through our maintenance section to clean and maintain the equipment on the tanks.
And when are the repairs expected to be completed?
I believe it was June of next year. It's in the report.
Okay.
Yes, June 2025.
Okay, thank you. There was a question about quarterly meetings held at Hyperion. Are you aware if those are still conducted?
The meetings are not held at Hyperion. They're held in El Segundo.
Oh, the Citizens Forum.
Correct.
And are you aware if those are continuing on?
I do not have information on that. I believe.
We may have another witness who may have the answer.
Okay. And you also mentioned you're talking about the fence line and deploying extra monitors. Were you talking about the AccuLog monitors that are along the fence line as well?
The AccuLogs that we deployed were at Headworks. They weren't at that fence line.
I see. Okay, so you have additional AccuLogs at the Headworks.
Yeah, we did put some up.
Okay. As far as the fence line goes, do you know what the plan is if the order for abatement were to end? What is the plan past that time with the fence line?
The Teledyne monitors were originally to be installed voluntarily by the plant. So that was going to be as a good faith effort towards El Segundo. So we have no intention of taking those down or modifying them in any way, because that was something that Hyperion was going to do irregardless of the abatement order. It was just incorporated into the abatement order.
Okay. And I believe they're operated by Montrose or a third party, correct?
Yes.
And so will that continue on as well?
Yes, the budgeted item for that work has already been implemented for the next year's budget. So this is something that we have.
Okay, and how about, I think part of the condition requires notification to the community members upon, I think, a 27 ppb reading over an hour. Will that continue on for email notifications to the community members?
That is all part of the system that we have set up. So yes, I would assume that it would continue.
Okay, along with the posting of the data on the website.
Well, that would be a different condition, but you know, or you're talking about sorry.
I'm talking about the fence line monitors, the data
Yes,
that's posted.
yes, it is our intention to maintain the website with the data on, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't have any further questions.
Members of the hearing board, Ms. Verdul Peralta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McIntosh, is that correct? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Macintosh, like
Okay.
like the computers.
Yes, okay. In reference to the NOVs that are still occurring, are there any, and you know, we've heard about all of the attempts to control all of that, and including, you know, putting on the lids, the covers, closing the doors properly, all of that, and yet there's still the odors that are bothering the residents that surround that area. Are there any investigations or testing that is being conducted to determine exactly where the odors are coming from, and if there's any way to control them? We're still getting NOVs.
Well, when the NOVs occur, we are given the information after the fact. And when most of the NOVs that we have received, we've only gotten 1 or 2 call-ins to the plant. So we are not, when we do get the call in, we investigate within an hour. We go to the residents, we check throughout the plant, we look for sources that, you know, we could help mitigate the odor. But if we are not given any information as much as a week later, there's no way to go back into history and fix the problem. AQMD does not come to us when they're doing the investigations. Generally, we are only notified once the NOV is being issued.
Okay, so you don't have a, well, it kind of sounds like you do. You have a response team in reference to the NOVs when you do get them, and if you get calls from the public, correct?
We have a person assigned 24 hours a day. So so we have somebody per shift whose job is to investigate the odor complaints when they come in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pearman.
Is the only wastewater treatment facility of the city of Los Angeles?
No, it is not.
How many do they have, if you know?
4.
And,
well, wastewater, we have 2 wastewater plants.
would you Hyperion as both reclamation and wastewater?
Absolutely, yes.
So the 2 reclamation and 2 wastewater. And how is it determined what wastewater goes where? Is that just the natural flow, or is there some sort of conduits developed or flow diversion? How does it work?
Throughout the city, you're referring
Well, how's it
to?
go of the now 5 plants? Why would wastewater
No,
go?
4 plants.
Well, but you said Hyperion, I thought.
No. We
So it's Hyperion plus 2 reclamation and 2 wastewater?
If I may clarify, all of the wastewater in the city of Los Angeles and all of the cities will flow into our collection system, to our sewer system, and then they will go to the various plants. We have 2 that are out one it's in the valley, one in Van Nuys, one in Glendale. All the wastewater that comes in from that area will be diverted into those plants. Those plants are the reclamation plants. They process all of the liquids and they put the solid material into the major sewers, which is then conveyed further down the line. We have two two treatments. We have Hyperion, and we have another one at Terminal Island in San Pedro. So all of the sewers that are coming in off of the basically along the 110 corridor flow down to the Terminal Island plant. All the rest of the flow comes directly to Hyperion. We process both the liquids and the solid materials that come through.
So the flow to each plant is determined by which beginning sewer system it gets diverted to, in other words?
Yes, they are designated lines. So there is no ability to divert from one area to the other. It is all a mostly gravity fed system, and it all just flows downhill to us.
Thank you.
Just a question. So on to Mr. Primer's point. So Los Angeles processes the entire county, West County. So let's say, for example, Gardena, Carson, Montebello, where would they go?
Those go to the LA County plant. We process for the city of Los Angeles area, but we do have contract cities such as El Segundo, but many of the other cities that are out in the valley, Hollywood area, it's more practical for them to feed into our facilities. The other areas that you're talking about along like the 605 area, those go to the county facilities.
Okay, so the sanitation districts of LA County.
Correct.
For which Los Angeles has a seat on that board, as well as LA County, right?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. So let's just hypothetically say Hyperion went away tomorrow. Where would that waste go?
It'd go out in the ocean.
Okay.
If you shut down Hyperion, you would have 200 million gallons of sewage flowing into the ocean.
And there's nowhere for it to be treated anywhere else?
No.
Okay. Mr. Balakapalan, your questions?
Yes. Ms. McIntosh, did you receive the letter from the city of El Segundo dated October 2nd?
Yes.
And they said that they disagreed with the testimony that you provided, saying that the door had been, I believe you did, closed while the trucks have been loaded. And I'm not sure how they, whether they came to the site or not, but that's the one bullet item, the loading improvement, contrary to what was explained at the recent board hearing, the doors of the truck have been closed. Can you comment on that?
I have no idea where El Segundo got that information. We do daily inspections of the doors. I go out multiple times throughout the week to check the doors are shut. Your AQMD inspector even verified that when he's on site that the doors are closed. I have no idea where this has come from. We have not gotten any backup data from El Segundo to explain where this information is coming from.
So all the doors have been, preventive maintenance is ongoing for the doors?
Always.
Always.
We have a regular schedule for preventative maintenance.
So now all the doors, except I see in one report, I think in the 2-3 in the are not operational, is that what it is? In service for the bay, the biosolids loading. Bay doors 2 and 3 are not in service due to safety concerns.
That's correct. There was some structural damage around the doors, and so it is not safe for us to have the doors open and to be pulling trucks through those doors. So while the doors actually are operational, they are locked out so that they cannot be opened, and the whole area is taped off so nobody can go in there.
So then the loading is which way do they
So
go?
they back in from the other direction. Normally they would pull through, so they would come in from the south side and then exit through the north, but oops, now they have to back in from the south side.
And then they back into the building, the doors are closed,
Correct,
and that building is ventilated to a
Correct.
control system?
correct.
Yeah. Now, you heard the inspector's testimony that on when he issued the notice of violation, November 15th, he came out to the site and he detected odors around the truck loading the primaries and the headworks. Let me back up a little bit. When he comes to the facility, does he contact somebody at the plant and do they accompany him during his session?
So what's supposed to happen is security is supposed to notify us that he's coming into the plant. He's supposed to check in with somebody. Generally, I believe he checks in with the shift superintendent. He doesn't generally speak to the engineering staff unless there's a specific question that he has. And he's not supposed to be driving around the facility unescorted. It's an industrial facility. We have hundreds of people going on. We have active construction sites. It's not safe for, just for random, for.
But it's fair to say that he was sorry by somebody and he went to that area where he detected odors. As a result, he gave the notice of violation.
I understand that he had, I was able to get some information from the superintendent. I believe the notice of violation was already being issued when that he took them around. And they did go through, look at some of the areas on the plant. But typically when the inspectors come in and they are offered to take, to do inspections around the plant, the inspectors refuse.
They what?
They refuse. They will not, they decline to go up to the fence line to take readings, or they decline to go around the plant to do inspections.
Why do you know?
I can't speak for the inspectors. And as I said, they're generally speaking to the shift superintendents. Oftentimes the these are submitted in off hours. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it.
Are you implying that he issued the NOV before he detected, or he issued the NOV after he was?
The NOVs should have been, from what I understand, is the NOV was in regard to complaints in the community. And so he was able to detect 6 verifiable odor complaints within the community. And then he came to the plant. Now, I may have misunderstood what the inspector was saying, but the violation was for odors in the community. And then then he came to the plant to
verify.
I don't know what his
testimony. He came out there and he verified there was odors from all those places he mentioned, the headworks, the primaries, and the.
But I believe the was already, to be issued at that point. He was coming to the plant to issue the NOV.
Okay. What is causing? Clearly, he says they are from those areas that he mentioned. And what is causing those odors?
Were when he went out into the facility with the shift superintendent, he did not detect any odors, and that was that the inspector said that that he had detected were intermittent, not consistent. So odors within the plant can come from a variety of different areas, but the level of the odors are not high enough to have caused any, there was no peaks at the fence line data. The fence line data was all very low. So the H2S that was reaching there was not, reportable. Odors throughout the plant can vary depending on what the situation is, the day activities are going on. It's hard to speak as to what was happening on that day because I was not present.
So is it, and so there's no future, there's no issue, should they be contacting somebody from engineering and have them escort him or walk?
No, there should not be, but he tends to be able to find the operators. So hence, he's not going to be able to find the engineers.
Okay.
But odors on the plant, I mean, we have scales for the levels that we are allowed to emit. So we are able to, you are to detect H2S at a particular level. That's not necessarily the levels where we are in violation.
Now, H2S is not the only source of odors at the treatment plant, is that correct?
I would assume not, no.
You're saying H2S, the only or the primary source of odors at a treatment plant?
It is the primary source of odors at the treatment
There
plant.
are other sources of odors from
There are sources of odors everywhere you go.
everywhere you go at the treatment plant. Yeah.
Well, any plant, any facility, any place you go, if you drive through the city, you will find all sorts of odors you'll get chemical odors from people
Let me
doing
clarify
stuff.
that, sorry. Objectional odors.
Again, we have different things that are going on. We do have chemicals on site. We do have activities. So there are different odors throughout the plant.
You seem to indicate in your testimony, Chevron is to be blamed for the readings. Is that?
I didn't specify that Chevron is to be blamed. I'm saying that there was evidence that there was an exceedance, and it did appear that it was coming through the plant.
You don't indicate it at upwind to indicate that, do you?
Upwind of the plant?
Yeah, from Chevron in relation to Hyperion, where Chevron, what are they southeast? Where are they?
They're directly south of us.
South of here. So any upwind monitor to the
there is no, I'm not aware of any monitoring. I mean, we have the airplane monitoring.
Right, which is on the
but I'm not aware of any that's north of the plant.
So how can you say that it's probably due to Chevron that the readings exceeded for H2S?
Well, if you have the wind blowing at a particular direction and you have 4 different monitors that show elevated readings in a sequential line, you can infer that this is what's happening. If you have, at the southernmost monitor, a peak, and then at the next monitor, 5 minutes later is a peak, and then the next one is a 5-minute peak. There's another peak, and then 5 minutes later you have another peak. You can infer that there is, a direct correlation between that.
And this have been recorded? The peaks, and you mentioned all these monitors.
Yes, this is all public information that we got. We don't have secret information to Chevron. We just get this off of the public facing website and the information that we have that's publicly facing as well.
So in your root cause analysis, what do you report then? When there's high, when you
we didn't generate a root cause analysis for this because there was no violations that happened on the plant associated with this. The root cause analysis are for exceedances at the fence line.
Right. And so those readings you're talking about as they progress, they didn't cause any exceedance of the H2S?
No, they did not.
But you see a pattern, you're
yes,
saying?
The rings are elevated.
And you don't see it at other times, only so then you correlate to what is from so who's checking the Chevron monitor to say, oh, okay, looks like their fence line is high. And look, that's why we're having those progression here.
Well, anybody can check that. And at the time when the inspector came to issue the NOV, from what I understand, the superintendent had checked the website for Chevron and showed him the data, but the NOV was issued regardless. And then when I had asked later as to whether or not there was any follow-up, because that was being given at the time of the complaints, if there was any follow-up to to the refinery, and I was told that that is a different division within AQMD and that they would need to have management approval in order to do an investigation on the refinery.
Okay.
All right, your next witness. Are you, oh, why don't we take a 10-minute break?
Yes.
Mr. Day, we're off the record.
I hope you lose your voice over because you're a Cowboys.
Man.
Could have been.
We were watching the game, screaming loud. We watched 8 hours of games on Sunday. We watched it all day. But no, I'm not a Cowboys fan.
Hey, Marwan, there is a microphone open somewhere.
Oh, I'll turn it off. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Miss Hoppenstance. She's up for her next witness. However, I wanted to ask, we're back on the record at 11:33 a.m. Just wanted to ask Ms. Kowalski, can you talk? And if not, if you would just simply call in, log out, and use the phone number to call in, because we cannot hear you. And okay, and so we have your written statement in front of us, just so you know that, and it'll be marked as an exhibit. Okay, Ms. Hoppenstein, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We would like to call, a respondent would like to call Mas Dojiri. Mr. Dojiri, could you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Good morning, Dr. Mas Dojiri. It's spelled M-A-S, M as in Mary, S as in last name, Dojiri, D as in David, O-J-I-R-I, and I am the Assistant Director and Chief Scientist for LA Sanitation and Environment.
And Dr. Dojiri, do you understand that you are under oath?
I do.
And we hear the testimony, or pardon me, the public comment that was earlier today about the harmful algal bloom and die-off. Just a few follow-up questions. Are you generally familiar with the event that took place with respect to the harmful algal die-off just this past month?
I am familiar with red tides, which is a misnomer because it's not really red and it has nothing to do with tides. But the scientists now have renamed it as harmful algal blooms, or HABs, and I'm familiar with HABs.
And the HAB event that was just experienced in Southern California, do you have an estimate for when it began?
Well, generally it ends in early winter, I would say.
How about this specific event? Do you have a sense of when the photo associated with the die-off that's described in the public comment began?
Generally speaking, HABs occurs sometime around late spring and goes into the summer. And the reason for that is because of increased nutrients in the water column, as well as soil intensity. As you know, any plants, you fertilize them, you give them light, you give them water, and they grow.
And the public comment from Mr. Ford indicated that there's a necessity or a hope to provide context for what was odor complaints that were being experienced at the time. And he indicated that October 28, 29, the odors associated with the HABs would have been in effect. Do you have a sense when those odors began related to what Mr. Ford testified to?
Yeah, generally speaking, what happens is that along our western continents, that's certainly us, but we have an ocean on our west coast, as does Ecuador and other, South American countries, etc. And what happens is that we have winds along shore that blow the surface waters away. And so then the deeper, colder, nutrient waters replace those superficial waters. And so with the increase in nutrients, the phytoplankton just go crazy, essentially, and they reproduce like crazy. But what happens is, so that's in the spring and the summer, but in the fall, when the nutrients get depleted, the phytoplankton are using it all, then they start to die. And so around the end of October, beginning of November, you have this massive die-off of all this biomass of phytoplankton. And then the bacteria, the oxygen-utilizing bacteria, what we call aerobacteria, end up decomposing all this biomass of phytoplankton, and that's what causes the hydrogen sulfide smell. It's a natural phenomenon, and it's been occurring on our coast for years.
Were there any news stories in October, around October 22nd, 23rd, already relating to the HABs and the odors associated with those?
Yeah, The phytoplankton had been decreasing. I've gotten some reports from Santa Barbara that this particular species of phytoplankton has significantly decreased at Stearns Wharf. Santa Monica Pier also has reported a decrease in this particular phytoplankton. So what that means is that they're dying and they're sinking to the bottom, and then they're getting decomposed by the aerobic bacteria, the oxygen utilizing bacteria. The problem is twofold. It's not just the depletion of oxygen because of the decomposition of the phytoplankton, but what happens is you end up getting kind of a dead zone in that area because the oxygen is depleted. So then now the fish and the invertebrates, all the marine organisms that live in those areas, start to die and decompose and produce hydrogen sulfide as well. So you have kind of a double whammo there.
So just to clarify timing, and then I have a couple follow-up questions in the double whammo, and then we can move on. For the timing, by the time Hyperion received the NOV on October 28, was the die-off and the odors associated with die-off already happening in the region?
I ended up Googling the odor smells in Santa Monica Bay, and there are reports all the way from Malibu down to like Manhattan Beach. And so obviously that is a really wide swath of Santa Monica Bay beaches and inshore areas. So it's pretty obvious to me that the odors that the H2S odors that were pretty high during the end of October, like October 23rd, October 30th, were the result, the die-off decomposition of the phytoplankton.
Now, just to ask about the double whammo, the die-off and the dead zone, kind of the combination of the two. You mentioned H2S, hydrogen sulfide. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is the hydrogen sulfide associated with the HAB and the consequences of the HAB smell any different than hydrogen sulfide produced at a sewage plant?
Hydrogen sulfide is hydrogen sulfide to a chemist or a biologist. It's a compound. So to distinguish it from, chevron or from rotting fish or rotting invertebrates or from rotting phytoplankton, H2S is H2S.
And that's the kind of scientific principle relating to H2S. It's not there. The nose can't distinguish between H2S from Chevron.
That's correct.
The nose can't distinguish from H2S from Hyperion.
That's correct.
The nose can't distinguish from H2S from the rotting effect from.
That's correct.
No further questions for this witness.
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Members of the hearing board. Mr. Abalakapalan.
So the jury, you heard the inspector say that taking the November 15th when he was at the site, and he observed and he smelled odors from around the not perimeter, around the vicinity of the plant, different headworks and the treatment operations and so forth. And I don't think he said H2S. He said this basically smell that he was smelling, and he also said he was aware of the H2S from the plankton and the HABs or so forth. He didn't think that was the source of the odors around the perimeter of the facility or around the facility when he did walk around, before violation. So what role does H2S background play in the notice of violation that he issued, do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of perplexed by that statement. I think that his statement was he smelled, I think, rotting flesh or rotting fish or decomposition, something like that. I think that was his statement. Remember that the creation of or formation of H2S is a two-step process. One is the decomposition of the body, which he was probably smelling. The second stage is the actual bacteria and the fungi break down the flesh and creating hydrogen sulfide coming from sulfide containing proteins. So, they're not necessarily sequential. You don't first decompose and then purify. They could happen, there could be a huge overlap in timing on that. So the H2S still could be created and Hyperion could still detect it at their monitoring stations, but the decomposition of the flesh, and I doubt that the smell of decomposition was coming from the phytoplankton, probably from the dead fish and invertebrates that I just mentioned because of the lack of oxygen. That odor could mask the H2S odor. So his statement could be true in the sense that he smelled decomposing bodies, but it's not necessarily true that that there was no H2S coming out.
So we had, in a sense, I feel contradictory statements here. The testimony was, we're not measuring anything. There's no elevated level H2S at the monitors. So it's not, the facility is not a source of H2S, because it's not seeing the monitoring levels. So if the HABs are decomposing and so forth, they're not contributing either reads at the where the monitors are located.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
The monitors that are,
Yeah, the fence line monitors.
the fence line monitors were there to monitor H2S emission from the source, basically from the treatment operations. And the testimony was that they're not there shouldn't be the complaints that were received. We're not seeing that at the monitors at the H2S. So really, it's the H2S, the source is not from the facility. Okay, so the same thing can be said about the ocean, the HFEs, that it's not been registered at the monitors.
So do you have a question?
Yeah, so where is then, are you trying to say that the emissions, the odors are only from the HFEs, H2S odors?
I think if you look at the data, the fence line monitors, the southern monitor, which is kind of directly in line with the secondary reactors and the clarifiers, not the primaries and headworks, that data indicates there's a little bit there. I think it was 6 parts per billion, not million, but parts per billion. So that's milligrams per cubic meter. It's low. I'm sorry, micrograms per cubic meter. So that's really super low. But still, it indicates possibly a more widespread source because it's not coming from headwards. It's not coming, most likely not coming from the primary batteries, but coming from a source outside perhaps of Hyperion. And if you look at the complaints that were coming in, we had complaints all the way from Malibu, all the way to El Segundo, and maybe even further south than that. So it indicates that there is a widespread odor issue, and the only source that I can think of is the natural source of the die-off of phytoplankton and the harmful odors.
Let me ask this: in your professional opinion, is H2S the primary source of odors from a sewage treatment facility, or are there other sources of odors from the operation of the plant? Organics and mercaptans and all kinds of other materials that are emitted.
Well, H2S is kind of a result of breakdowns of sulfur-containing proteins. So I would presume that the main source at the treatment plant would be at headworks or the primaries.
Okay, let me ask it differently. None of the monitors are reading elevated level H2S.
That's correct.
Right. So whether it's coming from the facility or from the ocean, it's not contributing to what the public is smelling and complaining about.
I think I just took a cursory look at the data during this time period, and they were all at single digits. And there might have been a few at the 10 level. But we have to remember this is PB, so parts per billion. And so those are really low. I think our action level is at 15, I think it is ppb, and we have to actually do something, and there's actually a limit at 30 ppb. So we're quite a bit below that, generally speaking.
Right. So then, generally speaking, the monitors are not getting elevated reading of H2S. So when the publics are complaining about odors, then one can assume it's not due to H2S because monitors are showing low readings. So it's is that
I don't know where their complaints are. I can't speculate on why they're complaining on the odors. I mean, that's kind of outside my scientific realm.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Your next witness.
The respondent would like to call Tanya Shelton, please.
Okay.
And for the board's reference, we're going to be asking some outreach questions, but the witness can also testify as to questions posed by the hearing board the last time relating to illegal dumping and other outreach campaigns. But in the interest of time, we're not going to focus our questions now on that. Michelle, please state and spell your full name for the record.
Yes, Tanya Shelton, Tonyashelton.
And what is your position with the city and job duties?
Yes, I'm a public information director for LA Sanitation and Environment.
And how long have you been with sanitation?
Coming up on 29 years.
And you understand you're under oath?
I do.
There were some questions earlier in the hearing today about outreach efforts by Hyperion or sanitation to the public. Could you briefly discuss kind of what outreach and just general community communications there are with the public?
Oh, absolutely. So we understand that the city of El Segundo is a very important partner to Hyperion, and as such, we make sure that we communicate as frequently with the stakeholders of El Segundo as possible. We have improved our notification process. We have sort of an at-a-glance notification process that we rolled out a few months ago. And we worked very closely with the City of El Segundo's Director of Communications to kind of fine tune that notification process so that they're getting notified of projects, maintenance projects, and other activities that may affect the community, being notification days in advance. We also have tours. We hosted the City of El Segundo this past August, and they were on hand to see the facility up close. We answered questions. We did have a voluntary forum that was created over 10 years ago, the El Segundo Citizens Forum, where we were meeting on a quarterly basis to hear from the citizens of El Segundo about any concerns that they had relative to Hyperion operations.
And there was a public comment, I believe, about or testimony that the Citizens Forum may not have been convened recently. Did you hear that testimony?
I did, and that's true. I believe our last Citizens Forum was held in January.
No, it wasn't.
And following the incident at Hyperion in 2021, we certainly understood that emotions were charged and folks weren't happy with Hyperion and in general. And so our quarterly meetings became very unproductive. There were folks who were not allowing us to even get to our agenda, a lot of shouting. And so we wanted to take a step back, have cooler heads prevail, sort of take a look at how we could retool that meeting. And we're happy to say that we have someone on board now who's augmenting our outreach team, who will start up community meetings probably in the start of the new year.
And in addition to community meetings, you mentioned the at a glance, the written communications being rolled out, and also some convening of meetings or with El Segundo. You indicate a meeting at the facility in August, is that right?
Yes. Yes, so I know that the El Segundo officials were there along with the Director of Communications. Other community members were on hand. And that's something that we're looking to do on a very regular basis, to have folks at Hyperion walk through the facility with us, see the operations again up close and give us their feedback. And again, that is how we took a look at revamping that notification system based on the direct feedback from our El Segundo partners.
And have the partners or the officials been at the plant since August, to your knowledge?
I believe so. I believe so. I can't say for sure, but I know that the invitation is always open.
And there are other communications and lines of communication?
Yes, there is a monthly report that you heard talked about here. We also have sort of a newsletter that we're looking at bringing back that will detail what's happening from an outreach perspective, as to what you've heard about in terms of technical projects and that kind of effort. So we're looking to really kind of beef up our outreach and make sure that people are hearing about all of the good work that is taking place at Hyperion.
And you were present at the September 5th status conference on this matter. And so are you able to testify, should there be questions of the board relating to outreach on what not to put in the sewer?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions for this witness.
Ms. Chavez.
Thanks, just a few. You mentioned somebody has joined your team as a liaison, or can you talk more about that?
Well, she's joined the team, Mary Murphy, with Hilda Bay as part of a requirement to augment outreach for LA sanitation relative to Hyperion efforts. So she has joined the team, I believe, as officially October 15th.
Okay, and what's the position?
Outreach, community outreach, and working really closely with El Segundo and our operations folks at Hyperion.
That would be City of El Segundo?
Yes, the City of El Segundo and its stakeholders. I believe there is a meeting tomorrow and she'll be introduced with the City of El Segundo representatives.
Okay. And you talked about a monthly report and newsletter. Who does that go to exactly?
So there are approximately 3,000 people. Our notices that I talked about a little bit earlier, the at a glance notification, goes to a mailing list of about 3,000 people. So those same folks would receive our newsletters.
El Segundo residents?
Yes, they're El Segundo residents, city officials, and whomever else. It's a voluntary sign up, so whomever else would like to receive notices certainly can sign up.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Verdugo Prauta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know, well, we had the mayor from El Segundo speak earlier, and he also stated that one of the major problems that he felt has not been addressed is the repair of the truckload. Do you know whether that was discussed at that meeting and or if that's being addressed presently?
Well, I don't believe I could really speak to the truck loading facility, only outreach. And so when we do host those community meetings, we do have an agenda that includes repairs, maintenance, ongoing maintenance efforts at the facility.
But do you know if at that meeting, whether he brought up that subject or not?
I do not, I couldn't say.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, let's move to closing. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have my very good friend, Ms. Kaczynski on the line. I mean, Kowalski. So can you lower your hand? Can you speak? Now, is this evidentiary testimony or is this public comment?
I'm going to public comment, and if they want to ask questions for me to testify, I'm absolutely willing.
Well, there will not be any questions for public comment. It'll be 3 minutes, and you'll have an opportunity
Okay.
to provide whatever you so desire. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again for this opportunity to share our ongoing experiences as residents and how Hyperion has continued to impact our lives in a negative way by impeding the quiet enjoyment of our homes, health, and sleep on a regular basis. So we feel it's imperative that you do add additional conditions to the abatement. And since the last hearing on September 5th, I personally have filed 53 odor complaints in the last 75 days with AQMD. That's 70% of our days impacted by Hyperion stench. I filed 23 calls to Hyperion Hotline, and I've pretty much all but given up on wasting my time with them. Every return call from LA San, with the exception of one, states no odors are detected at my residence when their own fence line monitors record otherwise. So the news flash is, their stench doesn't stop at the fence line. I would also ask the district to request the readings of the additional 8 portable monitors at the 6 locations, as well as the readings from the 6 drone monitors that are used to investigate our residents, as they are not continuous monitoring type, but they're a mere snapshot in time. I would also ask which model drone monitors are being utilized, as they often has limitations of only detecting H2S readings between 3 to 10 parts per billion. Do any of you know what a 2 smells like? I do, because I vomit between 2.5 and 3 of H2S. So use of this type of model would explain why the plant's investigations come up with no odors detected every time they're at my residence, because even $1 million handheld monitor has its limitations. I would also ask for full transparency from Tonya Sheldon, as she did just speak, in charge of public information and LA San community outreach, as she did testify on September 5th that they hold a citizens forum meeting on a quarterly basis with residents, and we're even bringing on a third-party outreach and would be introducing a monthly meeting, when in fact, like we said, Hyperion hasn't held any in-person or virtual town hall meetings with residents since December 6th of 2023. I would also ask for an investigation into the nightly odors experienced between 2 and 4 a.m. Their own fence line monitoring confirms it. On September 5th, Nicole McIntosh, the acting civil engineer overseeing their pollution control center, testified odors are not billowing out in the middle of the night. That additionally, all doors along with odor mitigation controls are working properly. Then how does the level of odors rise enough to awake residents on a nightly basis? I would also ask if Hyperion has identified the $20.8 million EPA conditions that were placed upon them, and what will the additional capital improvements slated to begin in 2028 be? What is the timeline of that work? Since they are in essence saying El Segundo will continue to suffer for a minimum of 8 years and running. And I would ask that the abatement conditions and order be extended until Hyperion shows a consistent return to the number of odor complaints prior to the spill of July 11th, 2021, for at least a year following. So I thank you for your time and attention. And I'd also just like to add that with the algae and the red bloom and the smells coming from Hyperion, 2 things can be true at the same time. Because I have personally walked past the plant down to photograph the bioluminescence, and at gate B, the smell of sewage smacks you in the face. Thank you.
Ma'am, can you just spell your name for the record, please?
It's Tamara, Tamara, Kachowski, KCEHOWSKI.
Thank you. All right, so before we move to closing comments, Madam Clerk, we wanted to mark the exhibits. So why don't you go ahead and help us with that? Yes, so we have the public comments. So the public comment will be, okay, and that will be the Tamara Kaczynski email is P32.
Which date? Because I see 2.
October 4th,
P32, thank you.
2024. Let's go with the other Tamara. Kowalski. That's November 19th, P33. either Mashia Jennings or Mishia Jennings, November 7th. P34. Holly Shelter, November 18th, P35. There's no name more than, no, that's the DC shop, okay. DC shop is at AOL is P36, that's Katina One. That's the DC shop at AOL November 19th at 12:13 a.m. P37 is McCarthy. And that's dated November 18th. So that concludes the public exhibits. And then for the respondent, Madam Clerk, we're going to mark the United States EPA agency region on this document. Yeah, yes, we're going to mark this as what?
Number 10.
Number 10.
That 18 or?
That's
Number
just
10. It's number 10.
That's petitioners?
No, this started out.
So just 10.
Yeah,
Number 10, period. All right. Okay, there are no additional exhibits. We'll move to closing statements.
Thank you. When the district initiated the abatement action, we saw a facility plagued with equipment failures and breakdowns that were causing the odors and public nuisance in the community. The abatement order has been a useful tool to require the necessary capital products at the site, including the replacement and repairs to the primary tank covers, the scrubbers, the gauges, the truck loading facility doors. So we've heard from the district inspector, the district isn't observing the same equipment failures or the main odor causes in the community. Along with the equipment improvements, the order included many operational and best practice conditions. And the abatement order continues to provide a pathway for Hyperion to improve its operations in a manner to not create a public nuisance and be responsive to the community. The district recognizes there continues to be odors coming off the sewage treatment plant, and Hyperion continues to have work to be a better neighbor with the community, work that will be ongoing past the abatement order. But over the last year, the district has transitioned into more of a monitoring role versus combating the active public nuisance with implementing new conditions. And again, we're not proposing any new conditions. Going forward, the district will continue to utilize its enforcement mechanisms outside of the abatement action, investigating complaints, issuing notices of violation, seeking penalties if necessary. When the abatement order ends, it is expected that Hyperion will continue employing these measures as best work practices for a sewage facility that is situated next to its residents, receiving complaints and responding to them, investigating the causes of odors and H2S spikes, proactively maintaining their equipment, the fence line, the tanks, the doors, the scrubbers, the gauges, reasonable expectations of a public agency that can greatly affect its neighbor. The option always remains for the district to bring this matter back to the hearing board. Necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Choi.
Thank you. Respondent hopes that the witness's testimony, both from the respondent as well as the district, has made clear that respondent is committed to better air quality at all times and it has every intention to continue to strive for better air quality and to be a better neighbor to the surrounding communities with or without the abatement order. And in that spirit, again, respondent joins the district in supporting the abatement order's expiration. Thank you.
Thank you. Deliberation, Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is that besides all of the things that are on the order and that you have committed to do and that the AQMD will be monitoring, the problem still remains that those odors are affecting the public in such a negative way. And I still think that that needs to be beefed up. Whatever response team is doing, you need to really find out where the source is and try to attack that, because I don't see that. Everything that's being done is not getting rid of the odors. And is this going to be a situation that it's never going to happen? It's never going to go away because of the nature of the beast, if you will, that is a water reclamation as well as a water treatment that's coming through there. I mean, that's what was the number that was 2 billion that Ms. McIntosh mentioned? That's humongous, and I understand that, but still, the city of El Segundo especially is still suffering. So I still have great concerns. I'm glad that we are as active as we have been, but I still think that we need to continue the monitoring, and hopefully the practices that you are going to employ in this is going to at least help them somewhat. And please listen to them because they are the ones who are being affected.
Mr. Pearman.
So, Ms. Verdugo Peralta, are you saying that you did not want the compliance date to end January 3rd, 2025, or did you take a position on that?
I would like that to continue at least another 6 months or so.
And Ms. Chavez, you had said you'd deal with that in your closing, but you only did it obliquely. So I take it the district position is going to end on January 3rd, 2025?
Yes, we're not proposing an extension at this time.
Well, your witness testified the complaints were like 150 plus a month, basically since the 2021 activity and way less before then. So is your position, the district position, that on January 2025, you should expect a return to only 8 to 10 complaints a month like before 2021?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a sewage treatment plant. We will expect complaints, but does it rise to the threshold of a active public nuisance?
Yes, I probably would agree to extend the compliance date. And I have a second thought that I'd like the board to consider. I'm not bound to it, but I was concerned that the inspector had not looked at the any kind of conditions regarding the tie into the what we'll call unfavorable wind conditions to the odors. And we've seen that in other places. So whether it be worthwhile to ask the district to request, since they don't like to be ordered to do anything, to report on whether, given the actual or predicted unfavorable wind conditions, meaning as described by the inspector when they're tied to the higher odors, the feasibility of adjusting Hyperion's operations to lessen the odor complaints in that situation. And it doesn't mean you would stop diverting sewage there, but of course, it just means you might change operations when you know there's a lot of high winds blowing to mitigate the effects on the community. And again, it's just a sense that given the continuing problems, I think we owe it to the community not to leave any stone unturned to look at things that might be feasible. But I put it out there to see if there's any support or not for that request.
I would support that.
Mr. Balagapala.
I was going to add, there is a condition 29 in the order regarding looking at installation windbreaks, wind flow disruptors. So that was looked at, and I'm not sure, I believe they reported to the district a report detailing the findings. I'm not sure whether we heard, anything conclusive whether those were viable, whether that helps, and when there's high winds, disrupt the flow to the community. At least I don't remember, so there is installation of windbreak, wind flow disruptors that, that might help in when you have high wind period. So there is a condition there. But the issue I have more is, I think there's a lot being done. There's a lot of capital improvement projects ongoing. I appreciate the EPA's providing a copy of the administrative order. It shows that there's more work to be done. They've identified from their point, the discharge into the ocean, they're not exceeding an MPDS ES permit, but some of the measures that they've outlined in improving the headworks, the electrical work there, and sensors and training, all of that, I think it's something that they're in their order and they're monitoring it. And I think to manage the effluent discharge. And also, I think the other point that I saw was they're also looking at what do you call high level channel overflow management, so that in case when they have another high an episode like we had a few years ago, they can route it to the aerated grid basin, minimizing damage to the downstream treatment equipment. That's what happened last time. There was substantial sludge that was accumulated that created, I believe, all these odors. So I think those improvements that EPA's required, it will help a long way. But what I heard today is what troubles me, and is what more seem to be finger pointing, as it's the planktons out that is decaying and creating, but that's an annual thing that the die-off that occurs, and maybe it's from Chevron, and that's the, that it's, for me, that's troubling. I think you're right. So treatment plant, there will be odors. There's no way you can, I've been to those places. There will always be fugitives, but and some of these conditions have looked at minimizing, looking at the covers, looking at headworks control, looking at the truck loadout and all that. That's ongoing and improvements. But there's still odors going on, and it's not just H2S though. I think there's so much focus on H2S and H2S monitoring, but I know there was a condition, and I that looked at asking to do some TO 15 study in looking at other organics, and I don't believe, I don't remember the results of that. I don't see that. And it's not only H2S, which is, in my opinion, that is causing the odors. H2S is a good indicator of the problem. So I'm inclined to Mr. Verdugo Palta and Mr. Kim too, I think, in extending this and to, hearing back, on this, not to sunset January of this next year,
All right, so. He didn't
Yeah.
raise his hand.
I too can go along with supporting extending it, given what, I think the discussion there with Mr. Verdugo Peralta and with Mr. Pearman and with Balagopalan, I think it's reasonable. If we continue in this route, we'd feel more comfortable ending the order, within 6 months beyond the current end date.
All right. In the matter of South Coast Air Quality Management District versus Los Angeles State Sanitation Bureau Hyperion Water Reclamation
Sorry,
Plant.
excuse me. I just wanted to say, normally you would make a finding of good cause, but it's not stipulated. It's not proposed by the district, and I think you have to make additional findings here. Just wanted to do that before you made your motion.
What do you mean by additional findings exactly?
Good cause exists, nobody saying.
Yeah.
The finding that there's an active public nuisance, that they're in violation, that Hyperion's currently in violation. Those haven't been made in this matter at all. We've had 2 years of abatement, but it's been stipulated. So all you voted at on this whole time is whether there's good cause to issue the order. And today would be different.
I mean, there is evidence we heard, there's ongoing nuisance violation, ongoing, 100 in the last 3 months. So there is ongoing nuisance in the community. So that's a given, you know, and also that the NOVs have been issued. So are the parties objecting, I'm assuming, to extending this another 6 months?
But here's is that both parties are objecting, and so
However,
we're in uncharted territory unless members of the hearing board wanna perhaps follow Ms. Chavez's advice and provide beyond a good standing or good cause.
Well, first, I mean, they've stipulated to certain findings of fact already, which constitute, among other things, violations. So it's already on the record. So they can withdraw that just because we add a condition they don't like. But if we have to do it, then I think you can state for the record, good cause is shown by the testimony here before the other prior hearings and as stipulated by the parties in the prior order, and you've covered your bases.
I'd like to hear from Ms. Hoppenstein.
In advance of this hearing, we were not informed of any change to the order, and so we're not in a position to respond. The testimony that was presented to this body was that the facility is in compliance with the abatement order. To the extent that NOVs have been issued for 402, that's something that the district has enforcement authority with or without an abatement order at any time when there is a 402 violation to a facility, those can issue. So the testimony has been presented as to compliance with the order today, and to take an action in contradiction with that would be to dispute the testimony of the district inspectors that came here to testify to you.
I don't agree with that because we also listen to the public. And yes, all of the information that whether it was from the district inspector or whether it was from your witnesses only proved to me at least, yes, you're doing that, but it's obviously not enough. And the fact that the public is so adamant about what they are experiencing, even if you're doing all of these things that are listed within these conditions, otherwise, why come before this board and tell us what you're doing if we don't have, and Mr. Pearman, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe we do have the authority to extend it. Do we not?
Certainly, I agree with you. I think the testimony of the inspector was, shall we say, inconclusive to state there was full compliance with the order. So that's an additional basis why I think we could extend it.
Ms. Hoppenstein.
Point of clarification, I believe there was only public comment today, and you'll have to consider with your counsel, comments can be taken into consideration like public testimony. Otherwise, the testimony offered today was from the District of Compliance, but that's for
That's not correct. There was one lady who said, yes, you can ask me questions. So she was also providing testimony.
You'll have to confer with the board members and your counsel.
Well, that's what I heard from one of, and I don't remember her name, whether it was
and while you can't rely on comments to be the reason, or certainly is a fact that can be reflected and part of the decision just can be the decisive reason. So to that extent, the public comment can be at least considered by the board.
I do believe the hearing board rule allows that. It's hearsay, you know, because it's not under testimony, but the board can still consider those in making a decision. Let me see, I can find that specific language.
Well, the hearing board can consider testimony, evidentiary testimony, but general public comments a different story. If someone comes to the microphone and says, I don't like Ali because his head is bald, that's just kind of what it is. They can sit back down. But there is a clear delineation of evidentiary testimony and non-evidentiary testimony. So to that end, we don't have to mince that discussion because we'll be here all day debating that. However, moving forward, are members comfortable with providing additional information because this will be an unstipulated ruling by the hearing board?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
All right.
I have the findings in front of me if you'd like me to read them to you.
Read the findings?
Oh, the three findings that you have to make
Oh,
that we
sure, go ahead.
discussed. An ongoing violation of Rule 402, assessing whether the order would be a taking without due process, or assessing whether the order would cause closing, elimination of a lawful business without corresponding benefit.
Five, right, 8.
So the concern would be, Mr. Pearman and Mr. Valakapalan, we'd have to prepare the findings. We can't use the findings of the petitioner. So the hearing board would have to prepare the findings.
Why do you say that? They've already stipulated certain findings.
Yeah.
Because it's an unstipulated order, and how do we use their findings when they're clearly stating that compliance has been met? Right. So we're going to augment, and their findings are not saying exactly what we're articulating this afternoon.
They have not withdrawn their findings. All they say, they don't want it to end on January 3rd. We reach a different conclusion about when it should end. They have not said anything to withdraw the current statement of stipulation, so we can incorporate those by reference, number one. Number two, we can take into account the evidence we heard today and state that we don't believe there's been full compliance. And therefore, the only change we're making is to extend the compliance date to 6 months from January 3rd.
And I'm looking at the 806A finding that Ms. Chavez just mentioned. So one is the respondent in violation for, health and safety code, the nuisance, which we heard, they are still continuing that the order abatement will not consider taking a property without due process. So we're not taking, down the facility, without due process. The order abatement results in the closing will be without a corresponding benefit. So, but we're not asking them to shut down, basically, in this case.
Okay, so what would the motion be? Incorporating what you just stated, Mr. Pearman.
Well, again, it would be that we found the facility in violation of applicable AQMD rules and health and safety code, that the order as modified will not constitute taking a property without due process of law, and that we've considered and are not cause the elimination of otherwise lawful business, that the testimony today, including the stipulated evidence already in the currently modified order, is sufficient to find good cause to make one change to the stipulated conditions, which is to extend the compliance date till, let's say, I think 6 months from now. Let me pick a date that's not a weekend or something like that. Oops.
Well, 6 months will put you in August.
Yeah. Today, August 3rd. So let's say the 4th of August, 2025. That'll be my motion.
I'll second that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, it's moved by Pearman, second by Verdugo Peralta. All right, any further question or discussion? We're gonna deviate from the normal order. Ms. Happenstance, we're gonna recognize you.
Thank you. I was trying to solve a bit of a crunch to the extent that this, rather than the board make the motion with the findings, we can be prepared to stipulate to the extension without the necessity of the board making those findings. So the stipulate to the extension of the order without the necessity of the board finding, for example, the facilities in violation of the rule or regulations, et cetera.
Sorry. Am I on? Okay. I would need a break to confer with staff on that. I don't have authority to seek an extension today. So can I take a break?
No,
10 minutes. Oh, sorry.
So what is the trepidation with the motion, Ms. Hoppenstein?
Oh, By having a stipulation, there doesn't have to be a finding made about violate this facility in violation. And so I think that would be make this simpler for everybody. And so that's the spirit in which this is offered.
And I'm asking that question because when you talk to folks within your executive office or within the higher ups in the legal division, you're going to articulate exactly what Hoppenstance is saying and find some common ground. If not, then we'll proceed forward with the motion. Okay, fair enough. So we take a 10-minute break.
Sure.
We're off the record, Mr. Day. Yeah, no, but we. Back on the record? Back on the record at 12:36 p.m. All right, Ms. Chavez.
The district will stipulate to the extension to August 4th.
Yes. I make, I'll make a
Okay,
motion.
Ms. Hoppus says it.
Yes, consistent with what we said prior to the break.
Very well.
Yes.
All right, the motion.
Oh, I put all my stuff away, I'm sorry. So in the matter of, if I have the case number, please. In the matter of South Coast AQMD versus City of Los Angeles City, LA Sanitation, case number, case number
1240.
1212-40, I move that we find good cause to amend the order to extend the final date to August 4th, 2025.
I second that.
Both party stipulation, thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion has been moved by Mr. Butler-Capellan, second by Ms. Verdugo Peralta. Any further question or discussion on that motion? How do you cast your vote, Dr. Abraham?
Vote aye.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta?
Aye.
Mr. Butler-Capellan?
Aye.
Mr. Perman? Aye. Holly votes in the affirmative. The matter is now unanimously approved. Thank you very kindly. We will, you guys will update all appropriate documentation and provide it to the clerk's office. Mr. Day, we adjourn at 12:38 and off the record.